right, welcome back to the Crypto Father channel. Today is the 2nd of November, and I've got a special guest today. I'm joined by Jordan Miller from the Satori Network, which is a project, and Jordan's going to do a fantastic job of explaining to us what it is exactly. But basically, Satori Network aims at predicting the future. And that sounds futuristic as hell. So, Jordan, welcome to the channel. And if you could give us a rundown, quick rundown of what exactly Satori Network is.
Sure, yeah. So the Satori Network is, like you just said, it's the network that tries to predict the future. It's a network of nodes, of miners that are all running algorithms and AI on data streams in the real world, trying to predict those data streams. And we aggregate all that to try to get a comprehensive view of what the future holds, basically for humanity, for everybody. That's kind of what it is in a quick nutshell. I don't know, where do you want to dive in?
Well, maybe could you maybe start with, like, where did the inspiration for this come from? Because I mean, I guess predicting future is like the holy grail for a lot of people for many different reasons, right? So to have something like that in your hands, it could arguably be almost dangerous, I guess, in some instances, right?
Yeah, I think it could, especially if you do it in a completely centralized manner. So the inspiration came from kind of back in the day when I was going to college, learning about various aspects of our society and everything. I realized the human brain does something to create its intelligence. You know, if it wasn't so efficient, it wouldn't be so intelligent. It's extraordinarily efficient. And so I began to wonder, like, where does that efficiency come from? Because I was like in programming and learning how to develop software and stuff. So I was very much interested in efficiency and optimization. So I wondered, where does the brain get its efficiency from? And the answer is that it gets its efficiency from being able to predict the future, basically of anything that it sees. So information comes into the brain through the eyes or the ears or any of our sensory, organs. And as soon as it starts hitting the brain starts to try to predict the future of what that data will be. The near term, the longer term, as it gets integrated into the brain, it becomes more long-term predictions, but it's everywhere all at once. It's trying to see the future and correlate those futures together. So for instance, I mean, as a really basic example, there's data coming in through the ears, and there's also data coming in through the eyes. And so as soon as the data hits the brain, the temporal lobe or whatever starts predicting the future of auditory information, of the data that it's receiving. And so does, the visual hierarchy starts doing that right at the beginning. And then these two data streams, they begin to blend into each other in the brain. And then they start to be able to leverage each other's prediction about the future to make predictions about the other data stream's future. Does that make sense? So that's how it gains that efficiency, is it's broadcasting out. Here's what I think the future will be at every location in the brain all the time.
Right. Okay. I guess it's done more on a subconscious level, right? It's not something that we're constantly aware of.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Right. How do you envision Satori's role in predicting future events across various domains? Because I mean, by looking at the website, obviously the goal is to have it being applied to a lot of different areas. For personal use, like one of the main directions in the white paper or the roadmap is to have it being used by regular people, like, for regular searches, kind of like people use Google searches, but some part of it, I'm sure, will be used for larger entities or larger companies. So yeah, to that question, so how do you envision Satori's role in predicting future across those different domains?
I break it into two concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, and I actually laid this out in the roadmap of phase 1 and phase 2, even though we can build these phases at more or less the same time. But the first and primary goal of Satori is to predict the future for everybody. So that's basically a public good. It says we have all these miners, they're learning how to predict the future, and what they're listening to is what people care about in aggregate. So that would be things like any large-scale economic data, I don't know, the S&P 500, inflation, any data that's kind of produced by governments, like government statistics, demographic changes, stuff like that. We want to know a lot about our planet and the weather and the climate. So we have all these data streams that we're predicting that are large-scale data streams. And then we correlate those data streams with each other and their futures. We correlate their futures with each other. And that's our public good, because all of those predictions are free and open, and anybody can see them and kind of get a feel for where we're going in aggregate as a society and what's going to happen in the future. And okay, so that's our public good. We have a private good as well, saying, okay, now that we are really good at predicting, these miners, they're specializing in certain domains. So, agriculture is a big part of our world. So it's part of the public good. And so we're going to have miners that are predicting on agriculture data streams. And over time, they're going to specialize in that domain. And this is going to be true for everything. So as soon as we have that kind of situation, we can open up a market that says, well, if you're good at predicting these, you've learned how these certain set of data streams interact with each other and all that. Then we can open up a market that says, well, if you're a big agriculture company or whoever else, and you would like your data predicted, because perhaps you have quarterly sales or whatever data you consume or whatever data you produce, you might want to know the future of that data specifically, and that's not going to be part of the public good. So that's where the marketplace comes in, and it's a private offering saying, hey, we'll predict your future data by kind of correlating it with everything else that we know about the world and producing a very good prediction on your private data just for you. So those are our two kind of very broad aspects of prediction, is the public prediction and the private sale prediction.
So the private sale could, because you brought an example of a larger company, but this could be implemented on an individual basis as well. Like I guess if you're, an individual
Absolutely.
in a specific niche, if you're, professor at a university, or you're doing something off the cuff, but you have an extensive amount of knowledge, you could probably implement that in research with Satori in order to produce a lot more data, and then monetize it, I guess, in some way, shape, or form for your own good, right?
That's right. You could do it that way. You could also do it like people have a lot of data, just like consumers. They're not trying to monetize it or anything. They're just consuming. But they produce a lot of data, and they might want to know the future of that data to give them insights into their own life. So, we're all walking around with hearts, that beat. And so we have data, biometric data, and health information that we that's probably something we'd like to know the future of if we can. Um, we also have financial data like our spending habits and where our attention goes, and it does seem like a lot of online businesses are trying to mine that data so they can sell you things and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's valuable information for them, and the future of it's probably valuable for you as well. So there's lots of solutions there. I do think that's kind of more long term. I think it'll take time for us to be able to get down to that level where we're kind of providing a solution directly to the consumer. But I think it gets there eventually, the larger the system gets.
Is it a form of AI, or is it like, how would you, or is it just, predictions based on data that's being gathered?
Oh, right. It's a form of AI. So AI is kind of a murky term, right? Because there used to be like statistics, and then there was like machine learning, and then now there's AI. So that's kind of how I distinguish the two. We use machine learning and AI. So kind of deep neural nets and machine learning, which is other kind of model producing algorithms. But at the end of the day, they're all just producing a model that predicts the future. Yeah.
I just attended a little kind of conference recently, which made me aware of the different types of AIs. There's the machine learning, and then there's the most recent was the generative AI, which basically allows people to produce videos or images, right? That's the thing. So would that have a part in Satori in some, like, where would Satori fall? Would it be in the realm of generative AI or machine learning?
It's actually both.
Yeah.
So it kind of has layers to it, is kind of the way I think of it. Like at the very top layer where you interact with Satori, we're building out a large language model that can be your interaction point. So it will say, look, if you have a question about the future, just come ask me and I'll do my best, because underneath me, there's a ton of prediction algorithms and all kinds of data being produced about the future. And it's my job to aggregate that data and just provide it in English to whoever wants, to talk about it.
Yeah.
But underneath that, we're using all kinds of different algorithms to produce predictions. So that very top level of generative LLM AI is kind of the top of the iceberg for this network.
How accurate is it? Like right now, I'm not sure how far you are along with your project, but how accurate is it right now? Because I tried to use it on the website. I'm not sure if it's actually functional just yet.
The website we're redoing the website. So that was kind of a prototypical website I started with because we needed something up and running.
Yeah.
And at first it would just show like the raw predictions, and then I tried to add a graph. It took like 2 hours, and I was like, I don't have time for this. I gotta get back to the algorithm. So we hired some website professionals to come in and just redo the whole thing, which is good. But what it's going to be able to do is show you the history of the data, and also show you the history of predictions, so that you can get kind of an idea of how close it has been in the past, and is it getting better over time, and that kind of thing. We want to be able to see that. We could just calculate like an accuracy score, but that's always changing over time, and instead of trying to educate those that come and, and try to see, we don't want people to have to be like a data scientist to interpret how well this is doing. So we thought, well, we'll just show it visually. We'll just show the graph. So we're still in the mode of compiling that and dealing with all the data and all that kind of stuff. But the network is making predictions that you can sort of query online right now if you know the data streams. We need that LLM so it's easier to search and talk about. But
so you're talking about like having a kind of a map that you could trace back to see where the prediction started, and I guess you could judge for yourself whether you like the final outcome or not, and whether it's accurate or not, right?
Yeah. A map, more like a graph. A lot of this data is numeric.
Right.
That's the easy data to start with at the beginning, and we could get into predicting non-numeric data, like Elon's next tweet or something like that. We can do that. Textual, image, whatever we need to predict, we will be able to. But the numeric is just so abundant and so useful. That's the low-hanging fruit, and we started with that. So we'll be able to show a graph of the numeric values over time and how closely we predicted them, and show kind of the forecast into the future.
I just mentioned a little while ago I attended I guess let's call it a symposium, because I can't think of another word for it, but it was on education and or how AI is used in present education, particularly since I'm located in South Korea and my livelihood relies on teaching English to Korean speakers, right? So the symposium was on the use of AI and how it's going to influence education, I guess not only in South Korea and not only for language learning, but also just, across a very broad spectrum of education in general. And the concern was that students would begin to rely on that excessively or too much on AI, and in order to create whatever assignments or plagiarization or cheating and all that stuff. So
Right.
The cheating and plagiarism aside, could Satori be used for educational purposes? For how could students, I guess, at whatever academic levels or secondary levels, how could Satori be used in education?
In education, I don't actually know. Everything exists in time. So we can always predict the future of anything. But it would be supporting, you'd want to know the future of trends in education or anything else.
Yeah.
And so I suppose in that way it could support education, but I don't know exactly what kind of future data an educator needs. What are they looking for? That kind of thing. That's the interesting thing about Satori is I understand that knowledge about the future is generally useful, but it's always generally useful for some specific purpose, for some specific person. And so people will bring like, oh, I could see how that could help my industry in this way or that way. And it's always stuff that I've never even thought of because I just don't know those industries. So, yeah, I'm not sure what kind of future trend an educator cares about.
I was actually thinking along the lines of students, but I guess it would be helpful with predicting future trends in the movement of academic papers and in the direction that certain research is taking. I guess if you feed it enough. So I guess once Satori is at a point where it actually can perform, the things that you envision it to perform, I guess enough data would be able to show the direction of certain research. Then I guess people could jump ahead and get on board with it. All right. Let me ask you about tokenomics, because that's one thing I'm sure a lot of people in crypto are, curious about, right? There's a lot of projects that allow people to kind of get involved with the project through either downloading apps and running nodes on their computers and, you know, collecting tokens, and then be involved in decision making as a community, right?
Yes.
So how does community-led mining shape the distribution of tokens? I guess that would be the question in Satori.
Community-led mining shaped the distribution of tokens. Well, we have a what that basically means is that the community is in charge of deciding what mining activities are valuable, or in what way they're valuable relative to each other. Right. So you can do a lot of things, and we'll add more, but right now you can do prediction. So you can download the node, it starts predicting. You can also provide raw data. You can provide, like, well, we need data to predict. So you can provide data, and the community is in charge of deciding what's more valuable at any moment. So this is called the minting manifest, or the distribution manifest, or whatever. It's how what activities are mining activities, in other words, and what is their relative worth. So that way the community has a hold on improving the system in that way. So they can say, we need more raw data, we need more high quality data streams, so we're going to increase the reward for that. And then once those come online, they can say, okay, now we need better predictions, so we'll increase the reward for that. And so it's kind of a steering wheel that allows the community to manage the system. Right.
And so with people downloading the node, I guess when you install it, I tried installing it, I was having some issues with my computer. It wouldn't, I don't know why, something's wrong with my setup here. It wouldn't let it bypass the firewall or something like that. I have no idea. I gotta figure that out.
Yes, I know about that. You want to know what that is?
What is it?
Well, we made the installer in Python, because we made the whole thing mostly in Python.
Okay.
A lot of machine learning packages are in Python, so we had to go that route. So, but because we made it in Python, Python's an interpreted language. It's not a compiled language. And so in order to turn it into like an EXE for Windows specifically, you have to compile it with, you know, these kind of third-party kind of compilers that have a lot of bloat, and they bring in stuff. And so the virus checkers always flag them as like, you know, suspicious or whatever.
Right.
And so we did this last week. We rewrote the installer in C++. So now it doesn't look like a virus.
So it should run smoothly. Okay, I should try it out now with these changes. What are some of the most critical upcoming milestones for Satori? You mentioned the two different areas, the private and the public domains. But yeah, what are some of the most
more near term is what you're asking for?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, those are pretty high level. So more near term, we're looking at kind of an updated website look and functionality. We're not going crazy. We're just, you know, that's kind of how we do everything, is very incremental improvements on all fronts. So that's one pretty near term improvement that we're going to be making. We are almost done with this huge improvement to the engine. So I worked on this project for 2 years before we launched. So I kind of had to build every piece on my own before we had a team to kind of show how the system works, you know. So I built most of the pieces in a very prototypical fashion, you know, just doing the bare minimum. So we had an engine that would produce predictions and build models, but it was using like one or two algorithms. and it wasn't, it was kind of doing some basic stuff. So we brought on a AI and ML team to kind of take it over and manage it from here on out. And they've made some major improvements. So that's one thing that we'll be pushing out pretty soon as well. But maybe I should think a little bit longer term, because a milestone might be further out. We need to improve the peer-to-peer system right now. And once we're able to do that, that opens up a bunch of doors for scale. We have enough scale to handle 20,000 nodes at this time, which is good, right? I mean, that's good, but that's not where we want to be in the future. So we're developing some better peer-to-peer communication protocols so that we can scale as much as we want. And have no real bottlenecks. So that's one thing that we're trying to do at the present moment. It kind of comes down to, we need to get to the point where we're consuming the best data streams. Right now we have a lot of data streams, but mostly they're like crypto prices, because those are easy to grab. So another thing we need to do is improve the data streams that we're looking at to be those large scale economic data, the FRED data, all the large price indexes and government statistics and stuff like that. So all these things, they need to be improved on every front, and we're just doing it like every day.
So do you have a time frame in mind? Like by when do you think the project will be available to public and people will be able to just hop on and, kind of use it, the search option on it?
Give it a couple months, I would say, for that.
Okay. That's not very long.
No, because we already have the design and we're already implementing. But we have to, there's a lot of things under the hood we have to improve.
Right.
Gathering the data and aggregating it, pre-batching it, all this kind of stuff that we have to do.
One of the things I always wonder about, so I've been kind of involved with a project in the past, and I talked to the founders, and I think one of the main things that people who get involved with crypto projects are concerned with are investors or the funding, because it's creating a project means manpower. Nobody or very few people have the time that they can devote just to a project. Like for yourself, it's your baby, you've created it, so you devoted the time. But when you start talking about hiring teams and this and that, so those are expenses that need to be covered. So I'm just wondering, where is your investment coming from? Like, how are you funding the project?
We had a very small investment at the very beginning, before the project had any valuation. A small investor came in to give us some working capital to get over the hurdles of legal prices and costs of setting up the entities and all that kind of stuff. So we had that. And then our goal is to never have an investor again.
Okay.
So to be self-funded through the value of the token.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, I think, for most projects, yeah, eventually.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like we're very far away from that goal.
Okay.
So we'll see. In crypto, anything could always changes and everything. But it's looking good. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think one more question. How do you envision Satori influencing the broader blockchain landscape, particularly regarding decentralized AI and prediction markets? I mean, right now it's, I think you're carving a extremely unique niche. It's the only project that does what Satori does. I mean, I have not heard of any other project talking or addressing predictions. I don't know if AI, ChatGPT or whatever other AI kind of are trying to do it, if ChatGPT even does that kind of stuff. So this is a very unique project, right? So yeah, how do you envision Satori influencing the broader blockchain landscape here?
So you're right. It's kind of a unique niche. But there are other players that are doing similar things, but nobody's doing this vision.
Right.
I just talked to a cool group of people at a conference recently, the Permissionless 3 conference in Salt Lake that just happened like 3 weeks ago or something. I talked to the Taoshi team, Taoshi, and I don't know very much about their project because I just saw it once, but we talked, and they're about prediction too. And what they're trying to predict is the future of certain markets.
Okay.
So the way their system works is not automated ML or AI. It's actually a platform for traders to come on and trade and essentially predict the market in that way. And then they aggregate the best traders or something like that and make that known or something. I don't know exactly, but as we were talking and I gave them the Satori concept, they said, we started out with something a lot like that, similar to that, and then we pivoted away to kind of a more niche a solution for something. And I totally understand. And they're dealing with different constraints than we have. They built on BitTensor, so they have to do things the way that ecosystem demands. We chose an ecosystem that's very flexible. So we can pivot, we can change, we can improve, we can do whatever we have to make the vision realized. We don't have any kind of arbitrary, well, not any, but we don't have a lot of the kind of arbitrary constraints that others have. When people started trying to combine blockchain and AI, and I'm talking back 2017, 16, that kind of era, it seemed to me like they didn't know how to do it.
Sure.
So we had like probably the most popular early blockchain AI concept of Singularity Net come online about that time or something. And they said, we're going to use blockchain as the marketplace. So, and then we're going to use AI, and we're just going to say, anybody can come onto this marketplace, build an AI algorithm, have it do something, and that's what it is. Right? That's what we're doing. And so that's extremely vague and not, trying to accomplish a specific task. But it made millions. It sold out of its kind of ICO or whatever it was in like a minute and 10 seconds or something.
Yeah,
2018,
17.
Because everybody, what's that?
2017, 18, that was the madhouse. I think every single ICO was just selling out regardless of what they were offering.
That's probably true. Yeah. So, but it shows that people, they understand there's an intersection here. But blockchain is slow. It's a large distributed database, so it's necessarily slow. And AI is the opposite. It's you want to get as much cycles as you can on that CPU or GPU. So it's very fast, so their bandwidth kind of abilities are seemingly opposite. But there is an intersection. And so the intersection that we see is time, temporal prediction. I'm sure there's other intersections between blockchain and AI in general, but the one that we see is time. If you can tie it, if you can come to consensus on the future, that's something worth, taking the time to come to consensus about. I guess in very broad strokes, that's kind of our niche. And I don't know how that's going to modify what other. Well, I will say this. We're trying to be the world's largest prediction network. That's it, like on the planet.
Yeah.
So the largest prediction network, if we can be the largest prediction network, we can have the most data streams, the most valuable data streams that are being predicted. And if we have the most predictors and the most compute power on those data streams, distributed compute power, then we can make the best correlations and understand the world the best, right? We're building this world model of the future. So if we can build a future world model, the best, and be the largest, I think there are going to be other prediction networks someday.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I see. And so when you're asking like, well, how is this going to affect the blockchain ecosystem? I think there's going to be others. And we're trying to be the first and largest in that domain. So yeah.
Yeah. I tell you, man, I think things like I use ChatGPT on a regular basis. Not only ChatGPT, there is a bunch of platforms for like video creation. There's Opus, which creates shorts out of longer videos, and then there's I forget another one that basically just compiles videos based on a prompt that you enter. And my friend and I, we're like, I'm 50, my friend is 55, so we're a little bit of the older generation, but not yet old enough to just completely not get anything,
Right.
But so the stuff that I see happening, the blockchain, I mean, cryptocurrencies aside, which is just mind-blowing. I keep thinking, my friend keeps saying, ChatGPT is like the closest thing to, or just AI, ChatGPT is the closest thing to magic there possibly can be. I mean, the things that you can do with ChatGPT are just mind-blowing. And so when you start seeing projects like Satori that are looking at prediction of the future, I mean, man, I just keep thinking about the future that our kids are going to be growing into is it's just mind-blowing. So yeah, like you said, in 2016 when cryptocurrencies, the blockchain was just taking off, people were still, I think, very dismissive, and they're not so much dismissive of it anymore. I mean, you see these giant banks now all of a sudden changing their tune and getting involved in Bitcoin and blah blah blah. And so the progression of the development of projects and things like future predictions now is just staggering, and it's becoming a lot more difficult to dismiss these things, and the development is becoming so much faster. I just keep thinking about the idea of singularity. I remember seeing a chart somebody was showing someday where it was a linear progression of the development of the Industrial Revolution, and how long it took from the beginning to the development of the first TV. It was like 60 years or something, and then there was whatever next came next, and the time frames between these developments have become shorter and shorter and shorter. And so now you're talking about, like, I've worked on this for 2 years, and you're talking about 2 months from a possible like initial launch of this project actually being usable. So it's just I'm always when I start thinking about it, it's just mind-blowing, the future that we're going into with AI and predictions of the future, man. It's wow, like crazy stuff on the horizon.
It is crazy. It's crazy how fast it goes. Yeah, absolutely.
Jordan, do you have anything else to share with the audience?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I have my head down in the code building all day, every day. We have just brought on teams, and we have people now my job recently has been delegate out the code that I've been working on to others so they can improve it. So we're in this transition period right now. Pretty soon, they'll be able to handle things on their own, and I'm just excited for the future.
Yeah, it is. I think the future is exciting. I think all the projects that are, especially this one, I think this is it's got, you really hit something there, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it to me. People I think they intuitively understand that this is something valuable.
Yeah, I mean, predicting future is a holy grail, I think, of, whatever area of humanity. But it's something, people go to fortune tellers and this and that, and everybody wants to know what's going to happen. And I know that this is not your aim, right? You're not aiming at having people use it as fortune telling for what's going to happen in my life, but I think there's definitely potential for people using that in that kind of direction.
Kind of is the aim in the long term.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get there very quickly, but
no.
But if you are able to build a network that knows everything about the world generally, it knows how everything is, trending, what direction everything is going, and it can anticipate the intersections. Then you have kind of the foundation of something that can look at any particular thing and say, I know where that's headed, because I know what it's going to bounce off of, what it's going to encounter, and I know how it's going to react. And I know, I can, so once you build this larger model, it's the foundation of a ton of smaller models that understand specific things.
Yeah.
And so you do get to a point where you're like, oh, I just feed all my data to the Satori network or the prediction networks, and they give me a future of that data. They just give it back to me. And, they're never 100% accurate because they don't know.
Sure.
But they're more accurate than I can be. And so I get to see what is the most likely future before it occurs. And then I can just alter my behavior to optimize that future in the fastest possible way, because I get to see it. And that's how our brains become so efficient.
Yeah.
Because they're able to see the future before it occurs. So, so I do think at some point it gets down to the individual level, but I think that just takes a very long time.
It could probably be used in cases of, psychology, behavior, or management replacement of that sort. Just wondering if at some point you'd probably get like the medical establishment, a pushback from the medical establishment or the establishment of, psychologists and whatnot, or maybe, I don't know if pushback or would be implemented in that, but I guess it could certainly be implemented in the medical field. If you have, a set of data for a particular individual or maybe family history of illnesses and all that stuff, you could probably throw that in and see what the predictions would be based on that likelihood of whatever.
Yes, I think somebody's going to make a solution for individuals probably before we get to it. But we'll probably inform their model. That's kind of the way I see it eventually happening, is somebody's going to say, okay, medical is so niche, right? I mean, it's so isolated that what we can do is centralize in a centralized manner. We can build a model or a bunch of models for particular people to give them feedback.
Yeah.
So you'll route all your medical data, all your biometric data. You'll get a watch that tracks everything. And it will go into this model, and that model will say, okay, I'm predicting out the next 30 days of your heart rate, on a minute basis,
Yeah.
and it will detect detect issues before the doctors, before it becomes apparent to you.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to do this on a centralized manner. But what's going to eventually happen is they're going to realize that their model could be vastly improved by consuming or routing that data to the Satori network and consuming predictions from the Satori network. Then they can take those predictions and implement their model on top of that, and then hand it back to the consumer. And the reason they're going to do this is they're going to say, well, we've made a biometric model, and we're really good at that. But what we don't have is a model of what's in your water supply, or how your political turmoil is going to change over time, depending on where you live, or anything else that could also affect your health, but is not directly part of your body.
Right.
And so there's lots of these other things that could happen. And they're going to realize that their model is going to be much better if they can get that information as well. So that's kind of the ultimate kind of, when I say like Satori is going to be the base layer of future prediction, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, it's going to be the network that can correlate everything with everything else. And there's probably going to be a lot of individual solutions. And where there are not individual solutions, Satori can step in and have miners that provide those individual solutions as well. So
yeah, all sounds fantastic, man. I'm seriously looking forward to it, to seeing it. I always wish I had a time machine so I could stick around for the next 300 years and see where humanity goes, man. I'm very curious. Like, I'm super curious to see where we'll be in the year 2300.
Well, where do you think it will go?
I have no idea. I don't know, but I mean, the way things are developing with, in my view, all the pieces, all the puzzle pieces for like an explosive future are already in place. Like, when we're looking at things like androids and humanoids and things like that, there are companies that do these things in separation. So there's no one company that is producing a humanoid right now, but there are companies that are creating individual parts of a humanoid, and it's just it's a matter of an entity or company bringing these things together, and it just one day, poof, there it is. You've got Sophia, that AI that became the first citizen or AI citizen of the United Arab Emirates or something like that. And then you've got Elon Musk releasing these, robots that are actually walking. I think last year, all you saw was just these robots being tested. And I saw videos, but now you've got this actual robot that is supposedly, and so Musk is talking about, this thing being available pretty soon for every household, and you'll have a robot basically helping you around with tasks and chores. And so it's just a matter of having the AI plunked into that robot, and you have a functioning humanoid robot moving around. So I just see all these different parts being already in place. It's just a matter of time before they all get they're all brought together. And when that happens, it's just going to be such a fast development on all scales, I think. If humanity doesn't destroy itself before then, that is, of course, which is also a
huge
likelihood, right?
It's possible. So these robots, I remember watching those robot movies as kind of a teenager or a kid or whatever. Like, there was the AI movie, and then there's, you know, that little robot Pinocchio character, and then there was iRobot.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few others, I guess, but I was always like surprised that people conceptualize these robots as being individuals. You know, like they are individuals. And I'm like, why would they be individuals? Because they might act like they're individuals, but they're basically one mind because they can interface with the cloud directly, and everything they learn, all the other robots in instant, it's just one entity.
Right.
Yeah. And so it does kind of seem like we're birthing a few AIs that are going to be one kind of thing. Like, well, I mean, with self-driving cars, you know, Tesla. I mean, it's not like your car has to learn how to drive. It gets put up into the model for all the other cars, and now they all know it, right? So, so it's like, what I see is that the AI is going to be this one or couple organisms on the planet that's massive. And eventually, like you said, like hundreds of years from now, humans are going to want to connect as fast as they can as well.
Right.
Because that just seems like where everything is going. We always want faster connection. So eventually we'll take our phone and just implant it into our head and be like, okay, now I can just think and know the answer to the question that I have.
Instant access to all the info.
Yeah, and that'll be like the Neuralink thing or whatever.
Right.
And we'll be able to interface with the machines and therefore each other at light speed, right? Like as fast as we possibly can, because that's what we want. I think that's what's going to eventually happen, and that's kind of, you know, on one level it's kind of cool, but on another level it's kind of scary.
Scary, yeah.
I think it's the most scary when you say, well, what about children? You know, like when do you implant the individual into the weird collective mind or whatever? And yeah, that's going to be wild. So yeah, but I think in hundreds of years, that's where we'll be.
Yeah, that'll be posing a lot of ethical questions, I think.
Oh yeah, huge ethical questions.
Yeah. All right, Jordan, I'm pretty sure we could chat here for a long time. I'll let you go because I'm sure you got other stuff to do.
Totally.
It was great talking to you, man. We're going to conclude this here. This was a chat with Jordan Miller from the Satori Network that is building a project to predict the future of whatever is available on the internet, which is mind-blowing. Again, Jordan, thank you for joining me on this chat. Good luck with the project, man.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Alrighty. Take care, guys.
Satori lives at the intersection of blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. It is a blockchain that predicts the future.